Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts in the Green Room, the interview series with your host, Geoff Mays. Today in studio, I have Monica Ogden, creator of Monica versus the Internet, which is in Toronto for a very limited engagement, one night only, this coming Friday, November 1st, in the John Candy Box Theatre at the Second City. Information and details, like always, will be posted at the end of the video. Now, Monica, being in town for one night only, was not able to join me before the show. Her and I have chatted. She's out in BC, and we've decided the only way we could do this interview, and we hope it works for you, is we're going to Skype live with her in just a few moments, right here on the Green Room. Second, ladies and gentlemen, you're getting a new format tonight, which is the pre-launch before the interview. This little blurb at the top that you're experiencing right now. And with that said, new format, first time ever using technology in a different way than I've ever done before. I'm going to bring us over to the studio live for a Skype with Monica Ogden. And here we are with Monica Ogden in studio with Thoughts from the Green Room. Monica, welcome to Thoughts in the Green Room. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
It is truly a pleasure. Now, I sought you out primarily because of the high accolades that Adam Bailey spoke of you, and then I found out you were coming into Toronto for, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't catch it off the top of the show, I'm saying it once again, you have one night and one night only to catch this fabulously talented lady performing at the John Candy Box Theatre with her solo 5-star reviewed show, Monica versus the Internet, Tales of a Social Justice Warrior. All right. I heard that and thought, I've got to get in touch with you. And of course, you're not in town yet. You're not going to be here till what, Thursday night?
Yep, Halloween night.
Absolutely. So, since you're not here until Thursday night, we obviously can't be in person. You presented me a wonderful and new challenge, which is how do I get in touch with you and talk with you live with our viewers, and here we are on Skype. New technology, new challenges, and thank you for that privilege of trying to overcome something. Wonderful. Now, you may know, and many of my viewers out there know, that I often fumble my way through a bio and chat with my guest about their bio a little bit, but Monica's bio is very impressive and covers a lot of topics which I only touch on typically in the show. So I want to take a moment to actively read this information out. You ready for it? Sounds like...
Ready.
Excellent. Sounds like we've got a little bit of a Skype delay, but that's okay. We'll work with what we've got. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to Monica Ogden. Pronouns, she and they. She is an award-winning disabled Filipina, Polynesian, British storyteller and comedian. She's an anti-racist activist and public speaker. Past guest panelist internationally at Emerald City Comic Con and Geek Girl Con, and the creator of the show Fistful of Feminism on YouTube. She holds a BA with distinction in gender studies from the University of Victoria. And some of her past accomplishments include A Role in the Doctor's Case, directed by James Douglas. She was part of the world premiere of the show 77 by Theatre Scant. She's a longtime member of the award-winning Paper Street Theatre and the creator, as I mentioned a moment ago, of Fistful of Feminism on YouTube. Now, all of this brings her forward to her current and existing project, her solo show, Monica versus the Internet, the Tales of a Social Justice Warrior, which is 5-star reviewed by both the Winnipeg Free Press and the Saskatoon Star Phoenix, directed by KP Dennis, which has toured 6 cities across Canada during this past summer, 2019, and recently became the co-runner-up for the TD Fringe Forward Award for Artists of Historically Marginalized Communities, and is being presented at Second City, Toronto, as part of their John Candy Box series, in partnership with the Toronto Fringe, after being recognized as new comedy to watch. Yeah? All right, Monica, hearing all of that, what's it like to hear your accolades dropped in front of you?
It's feels long, and I apologize that you have to read all of that. It never feels long when I type it, but there's so much going on all the time. Yeah, I mean, I every time I like hear the bio back, if I'm like at a speaking engagement or just somebody reading it, I'm like, it just reminds me like how much I've done in the past couple of years, how long I've been working. Like since a very young age, right out of high school, I've been working in the theater community and did film for a while and just was really focused on like career, until I like figured out that like theater and film and all these things that I was so passionate about, it wasn't quite there. And then I found gender studies and activism, and it all kind of comes together now. But yeah, I don't know. Like I'm exhausted all the time, and it's probably because of all the things in my bio.
and I think truly, as much as you suggest that's long, it was my pleasure to read it out because they're well-deserved accolades. We've talked a little bit, and I understand where some of these things come from. We're going to share that with the audience. But it was my pleasure to read them out, and it speaks to me about the plight of an artist, or the joy of an artist, depending how you look at it. And that is, we're always finding what's current, what's present, and what we are in tune with in the given moment that we can pursue and present back to our audiences in whatever form or fashion we deem it appropriate, right?
Yeah.
So you're truly embodying the artist. Congratulations.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely. Congratulations on that. A little bit of history, ladies and gentlemen, as to why I sought out Monica Ogden. For those of you who watch the show regularly, you know that I had Adam Bailey on here a few weeks ago. And Adam Bailey touched on some aspects about the Fringe and touring the Fringe that, as a white straight male, shocked me. Wasn't aware that it somewhat caters to a white straight male if you're touring a Fringe show. And that I am that, I would have never been aware of it, and Adam helped open my eyes. Now, he mentioned you, Monica, as one of the standout shows that really addressed some of those isms that were plaguing the Fringe that he was experiencing, and in general, isms that plagued the world. I'll pause for just 1 second there about isms that plague the world. Every time it comes up in my show, I do my best to shout out and to try and help raise awareness through my guests about the isms, the racism, the prejudicism, the everything-ism, the mental health awareness, and bringing people to the forefront of social points that are swept under the rug way too often. And all of my guests have touched on it. There's an awareness in general. Adam being at the forefront, speaking of you, somebody who is truly at the forefront and the cutting edge of helping combat these isms. Your show, I understand, also helps to combat these isms. I'm grouping them all into one thing, and I hope I'm not doing a disservice by doing so, but I wanted to speak to you about this and bring it forward to help raise awareness among the artistic community and hopefully reach out further than that and let some of the greater world hear some of that. And finally, to get them to see it live. Go and see this lady, ladies and gentlemen. Go and see her do this show live. I will be there on Friday night and hope I'll see you there. So with that background and the promo of Adam, what we talked about, I'm curious. Let's start off with, tell me a little bit about the show. Tell them a little bit about the show, Monica versus the Internet, Tales of a Social Justice Warrior.
Yeah, it's a lengthy title, so sorry about that. But Monica versus the Internet is fine for shorthand. Yeah, the solo show started back in 2017 at the Victoria Fringe Festival, before I ever thought about touring. And I brought on KP Dennis, who is my co-creator, director, and like all things Artner. They're amazing. And back then, the show was a lot more about the internet, or more focused on like various parts of the internet. So like meme culture and things that were very pertinent in 2017 on the internet. And I created the show because I started a channel on YouTube called Fistful of Feminism, which you can imagine breeds the greatest fan base ever of sad straight white boys who just want to kill me on the internet. So they left really horrific comments, and not all straight white men, but mostly straight white men. But all sorts of people left hateful comments, mostly men. And some of them were so ridiculous that I didn't think that I should hold them alone. Like, I didn't want to be the one person seeing these hateful things, because I'm not famous on YouTube. I have, like, to this day, like, less than 500 subscribers. Like, that's nothing in the world of YouTube. I was doing it for my own passion, and I was learning things in a gender studies degree that I wanted to share with the world. So their anger and their hate and all of these things that culminated online, I turned into a solo show. So shared the real comments, made songs out of them, made a game show out of them, and just tried to show this juxtaposition between the way I'm presenting the hatred that I experience and the actual hatred. And back then it won an award at the Victoria Fringe, and we were very happy to be recognized back then. And then it kind of went on the shelf for a couple of years because we weren't really sure what was next. I knew I wanted to develop it further, but didn't know when I'd have the chance. And then I entered in the Canadian Association of Fringe Festivals lottery this past year and won. It was my first time entering, and I won. So I knew I wanted to go on tour from then on, and I went with KP and Tony, who are part of the company. And I knew I wanted to redo Monica versus the Internet and create it to be a show that reflects who I am now, because all the things that had happened to me in 2017, all the hatred I'd received on the internet and in theater communities and in fringe communities, so much more of that had happened up until 2019. So I had to redo the whole show, and it became more about me, who I am, my family, and our intergenerational trauma, the Filipino women who have raised me to get me to this point where I can now be an activist and have the privilege to do that work. So it's a very much a different show. I think it's a way better show than it ever has been. And we're happy to be recognized by winning awards and getting wonderful reviews. It also kind of showed us that there's a need out there for the kind of work that we're doing, especially on the fringe circuit, because stop myself there, the Fringe Festival is so white and so racist. So that was part of me wanting to go on tour. I guess my naivety was, we're going to go and we're going to combat this, and things are going to change. I don't think a whole lot changed. I think we just experienced a lot of bad things on tour. But I think that we brought new people into a theater environment that is still not welcoming of those people, of racialized people, of Black, Indigenous, people of color, disabled people, cutie pock people, which is queer, trans, two-spirit, Indigenous, Black people of color. I mean, the work isn't done, but that's why we're doing it, I guess.
Absolutely. And I heard you say in there that, that you don't necessarily know that you did anything, but I think that you did everything, whether you're the first in the ring or whether you're part way along the process. You're always doing something by raising a voice. A voice raised is a voice heard, and a voice that's heard is the steps to change, in my opinion. Right? So congratulations on that, and stepping forward on behalf of those communities. I can't say specifically that I am part of that community, but I definitely am an ally, and I'm so pleased that I can associate to individuals such as yourself and help raise awareness through this channel. So what I was hearing in there, and first off, congratulations on the accolades from this show, the past version of it and current version of them, well deserved. I'm hearing that you take a playful stab at some of the, I guess to maybe be a little light in this, some of the idiocy that comes at you through your YouTube channel. And you mentioned the statement of not wanting to hold it all to yourself. I'm curious, I've never experienced that. I know that many of my viewers have never experienced that kind of push or angst or rage or hatred, period, against them. What is it like to experience it and work to manage it? Obviously, it's culminated in this show, but is there any insight that you might be able to give a viewer out there who's got no venue like your YouTube channel or my YouTube channel, what they might do to breathe it in and breathe it out?
Yeah, that's a good question because I'm still grappling with that myself. I think the point of me like keep having it as a thing that was just on me was because I set for my own mental health and self-care, I set my comments to like I have to approve them.
Mm-hmm.
So that was how, well, and a lot of the comments got before I set that setting, but a lot of those comments were the only person who could see them was me logging in because I knew that most of them was going to be hate speech, and they were mostly hate speech. So it was this really like isolating feeling, being an Asian woman and, you know, trying to figure out who I am in those times. I mean, Fistful of Feminism was largely how I came into myself and found my voice. So it was really hard to like know things to be true, that like I know who I am, I know what I'm doing is right. But then to see all of these comments that were like, you know, you shouldn't be alive,
Wow.
that you're not doing anything good. You know, I won't repeat all of the horrible, hateful things, but it just needed to be a place where I could give that. Like nobody, I don't believe anyone, if you're experiencing racism, should hold it alone. I think it's something that communities need to address together, because if anyone is experiencing racism, it's the community's job to do something about it. And that largely is that's a pre-colonial mentality. Colonialism has made it so that we think individually, and that we don't consider how we're implicated in a greater community. And that's not how, I mean, in a lot of ways that was what I was indoctrinated with, but that's still not how I was raised in my culture. To me, Filipino culture is very much community based. It's about everyone and sharing together. And even though I wasn't completely immersed in that all of the time, I know that my ancestors knew how to do that. So, yeah, I think finding community is ultimately a goal with Monica versus the Internet. And I have a great privilege too. I'm a light-skinned Filipino woman, meaning that I don't experience colorism like I have 3 times in my life maybe. And that is something that so many people face every single day. And so that privilege is very much a part of me choosing to take on activism and all of the weight that comes with that, because I have enough privilege to do that and to keep other people safe who are made more vulnerable by white supremacy than I am. Mm-hmm. So it's my job to intervene and to do the work of undoing racism, because I can exist in the world easier than dark-skinned folks of color. So that was a part of it too, is that I'm sharing it, and I'm sharing the comments and all the hatred and the stories, but ultimately it's a call to arms to folks. And I'm hoping that white folks that come to the show understand that I'm saying it in a comedic way, and sometimes I'm not saying it in a comedic way. I'm angry, and I want folks to do something. And most of the time that leads to more hatred because white people are fragile, but I'm not going to stop. And yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how to hold all of that sometimes. Sometimes, you know, what people don't see when I'm not doing the show is that, like, I'm in bed for, like, days on end after a racist thing happens, and I just, like, can't physically do anything. I'm also disabled, so my body doesn't function like able-bodied people do. And most of the time I try and share that on my social media, like I'm suffering or I'm not okay. It's okay not to be okay. I also have mental health issues, like you were mentioning before. But it's hard when the facade that's out there, and it's even in the title of my show, the social justice warrior. If that's the image that people think of when it comes to me, they're maybe not going to think to like check in and see
Right.
like, are you okay dealing with all these things?
Right.
So my show is really trying to show like, hey, I'm not okay sometimes, and it's okay to not know how to deal with these things all the time.
Right. And I love, you said many things in there, and the one of them that stand out the most to me is your show is a call to arms, a a push forward for, yes, you're poking
Yeah.
fun, but you're hoping, and I'm saying this out loud and reiterating it for those who may not have picked it up in there, that she's poking fun at this, but it's not to laugh. Or it's not just to laugh. There is obviously a comedic element to it, but it's to raise awareness, to bring the call to arms forward and say, stand up. You speak very prominently of the fact that you have privilege and that you are not a traditional woman of color, so you're not subject to the colorism prejudice that so many others are. And that really stands out for me also, Monica,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm the epitome of all the things that your show would typically stand against. Were my attitudes different? I am a white male, heterosexual. Like, wow, we don't get any more privilege than that, right? All I'm missing is a silver spoon,
Right.
and it's a powerful reminder to me that because I have that place, my voice is that much stronger than many others, right? And it's a reminder to me. I'm looking forward to seeing the show and hearing other aspects and inciting more fire within my soul, that I may be able to stand more united with brothers and sisters and people who are not necessarily binary associated, and help raise that voice and awareness. And you said something else in there, and this one stands out for me. You said that you are disabled. Now, there's nothing that I can see, and I'm not trying to minimize this, but I'm trying to, with my next statement, my goal is to raise further awareness. There's nothing visual going on that says, oh, look, Monica's got a fill in the blank. You've got you've got challenges that you face, and again, another level where people need the awareness to think about people in a broader spectrum. What you see is not always what you have. You can't judge a book by its cover, right? And
Yeah, for
absolutely.
sure.
And
Yeah,
that's
I mean, there's a reason that folks talk about invisible disability, right?
mhm, absolutely. And and we started that question off with the idea of what do you do to breathe it in and breathe it out, that maybe you can relay it out to some of the other um, audience that doesn't have a venue such as ours in artistic endeavor or something they do privately. And you said there are days when you end up on the bed, that you don't leave the house, proverbially or literally. And that, I think, in itself is a reminder to anyone out there who deals with any form of hatred thrown against them to take a deep breath, and if you need some time to yourself, spend a day or two. Call into work with that mental health day, that sick day, whatever the term is that you need, and take the day, because that is one of the ways to breathe it in and breathe it out. You can't stand tall all the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a firm believer in like folks of color should, like in their workplaces, have time off put aside if they're dealing with racism. That's like not a thing that's in most workplaces, but I truly believe it should be, because it's a very specific kind of harm and hurt that comes from dealing with racism and white supremacy, that needs to be addressed in the way that it affects our bodies and our mental health. And I just think that folks should get whatever time they need to deal with it, because it's not fair and it's an unfair burden placed upon specifically Black, Indigenous people of color.
I very, very much agree with you. So many things that we overlook that, any form of hatred affects. And that effect
Mm-hmm.
is is different, obviously, but can be related to those who don't experience that hatred as maybe dealing with grief. Nobody can see you dealing with it, but you've got it. you need some time away to deal and manage the grief. Well, you're affected by that. Can you imagine what it's like taking on hate speech or hate action all the time in your workplace? I want to shift gears slightly here. You mentioned several times, you've spoke about your culture, and it comes across with great pride, your ancestry, and that influence to your show. Tell us a little bit about that influence in the show, and how that weaves in, or how that weaves into your standing, your point today.
Yeah. The Monica versus the Internet is fully Filipino. Man, it is. It's an ode to the Filipino women who have raised me, which was my mom and my lilang, which is Ilocano for grandma. And Ilocano is a dialect of the Philippines that I'm slowly learning bits and pieces of, and I'm slowly learning Tagalog as well. But really what it came down to is that if there was going to be a show about me, about my personal stories, because I'm a storyteller and a comedian, then people need to know how I came to be me. And that is all associated with how my mom and grandma raised me. There's certainly a lot of other people in my life who have influenced me, but those two who have instilled in me culture, instilled in me worldview, and things that are important to us and our families, that's why I am where I am today. And that's why I pursue anti-racist work, because in the lives that they led, they had to survive so much. And, I often think about what they could have accomplished were it not for the forces of white supremacy keeping them in places they didn't want to be. And so with the privilege that I have, again, my light skin privilege is a huge part of that. Being mixed is a huge part of that. If I have the privilege to go up on stage, and that's my job, and share stories and comedy and make people laugh, then it has to be for something. It has to be important, and it has to be centered in my community, like I was talking about before. So the show is about us three. I call us the Pinay Gilmore Girls. It's like the Filipino Gilmore Girls, because that was a reference that worked, I guess. And so while it is about me dealing with the internet and dealing with hatred that I experience, it's also showing you how that has also happened to the Filipino women in my life, and how similar and different at the same time it is, and how all of us experience the world. And that's what I think is important about my show. That's what's connected to Filipino families across the country. And has brought new Filipinx folks to fringe festivals who had maybe never gone before. And, in the context of coming to Toronto, I'm really excited because I'm on the same night as Tita Jokes, which is a huge hit in Toronto. The Tita Collective are amazing. I love them so much. They're some of my good friends now. And during the Fringe Festival this year, we totally bonded. There was 3 Filipino-centered shows in the Toronto Fringe, and we made a hashtag and made it a whole thing. But I think that's really important, is that it's beyond representation. It's not just seeing yourself represented. It's hearing things that matter to you. So the stories of my family, they resonate with other Filipino folks. Or the things I think are funny and laugh about and making comedy about resonates with so many people.
Right.
And it's not that only Filipino people like my show, but that I know that it's grounded in honoring them, and I want to share that. And for so long, fringe festivals and theater festivals, like we said earlier, have been catered to white audiences. And I don't believe in catering to those folks, because they've had the entire world catered to them. And I've never seen anything catered to me or my family members.
Absolutely.
So it's from my worldview. And I invite white folks to come because they are part of this responsibility. But there's part of it differently. And I will not speak to white folks as if they are the normal people. I will call them white. And that is, in and of itself, is like really scary for people, because they're like, what? I thought it was just a human. But I think it's important that white folks specifically are laughing at my comedy because it illuminates things about themselves maybe that they've never thought about or that they're going to leave the show thinking about.
Absolutely.
So,
That's good comedy, right?
yeah.
They always say the truth is what sits here with the comedy, the exaggeration of or the falsity of it, but all good comedy comes from truth, and I'm pleased to hear you approaching that. You also spoke in there, a lot obviously culturally around the Filipino culture and your connection to it, but I feel that you're speaking, and I hope I'm right in this, that you're speaking a universal theme to culture, period, right? People are rooted in culture, and that's something that I find in North American culture is sorely lacking. I grew up in a community that was predominantly, where I went to high school, predominantly Italian, Portuguese, that area, Greece. And all of my friends, or many of my friends, lived with their mothers and fathers and their grandfathers and grandmothers and sometimes their great grandparents, and if they had older sisters or brothers, sometimes a generation beneath them as well. I grew up living with my mom and dad and my sister, and that was it. We visited our grandparents, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that I think is sorely lacking. You're speaking about the challenges that your ancestry faced and what could have they accomplished. And I think they have accomplished so much in that they've paved a path for you to be able to speak the way you do currently in this show, and others of varying cultures who can now speak freely because of what your ancestors did for you. That community and that connection we learn today by the lessons of our history, right? And hopefully we don't repeat the negatives and we take from it the positives and grow.
Yeah.
And this is something that I find traditionally is being lost in North American culture, falls short on it. We don't have that community. We are, as you mentioned earlier, raised as individuals to think in isolation. Rarely do we think connectively as a group, and it, in a base form, two heads are better than one, right? In its very base form. Now, Monica, all of this sounds absolutely fabulous, and I am personally excited to see this show. I'm going to do a little recap here and make sure that I'm on the right page. Your show, once again, 7 p.m. this Friday night, November 1st, John Candy Box Theater, Second City, right?
Yep.
Excellent. We're dealing with a fun comedic show that deals with head-on, maybe subversively, maybe advertly. We're going to find out when we get there how exactly it deals with it, but touching against racism, bringing in culture, bringing in family connection, and some of the things that are challenges here today in our present. And we've got a wonderful, wonderful individual who's bringing this to life and giving us thought and process while we get to laugh at it, and I hope you can make it out there. Monica, that is our time for today. I am so pleased that you are able to make time for us, that we are able to work this Skype thing. I'm going to play with this in the end and see what we actually get on the final product. I'm sure we'll have something that's powerful, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday. Friday. Wow, 3 days ahead of myself. On Friday night.
You're gonna miss it if you show up on Monday.
I'm looking forward to seeing you on Friday.
It's been a fun experiment in technology, and yeah, I'm really excited for you to see the show and for other folks to see the show.
Excellent. I'm going to keep you for a few moments after we sign off here, Monica, so we can do our little wrap up. Ladies and gentlemen, these are your thoughts from the Green Room in the interview series. All of that information we've talked about and all of the ways you can follow Monica, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, the whole works are all listed in these credit scenes that are coming up right now. We will see you in just a few weeks.